Hello, welcome back to the Glassgirls Network with me, Jonathan. Today I am joined by a very special guest, former Glassgirl, Demi Walker. How are you, Demi?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. I know we've been trying to get this on for a while, but we've both been so busy. I can see that you've been really active in the gym, going to a couple of trials as well, which I suppose we can get into throughout the show. Yeah, first and foremost, how's your summer going? What have you been up to?
Yeah, my summer's not too bad, thank you. Obviously, even though we've had a break from football, I still, because I work in a school, I'm still at work every single day, so I don't completely get a break. My break from work then starts when football starts again, so I never completely get a rest. But I think it's nice to just have a bit of a break from football, reset, and then get yourself back into it again, really. But you miss it when it's not there as well, so.
Absolutely, yeah, I understand. And is it a 6 week holiday that you get in the summer, or is it different to the children?
Yeah, no, exactly the same. So I get the 6 weeks in the holidays, but obviously that's like where your pre-season kind of is in your pre-season fixtures with football. So it's quite challenging sometimes.
Yeah, I get you. I do. I understand. I want to get into a little bit about your time at Stourbridge, but before we do, just a little bit about yourself, because I find that, or found last season that, and you weren't the only one, players came in, but we didn't really get to know them too much last year in regards to like what they was getting up to and this, that, and the other. So I think when you came in, I think the fans were really happy because within the first couple of days, couple of games, we thought that you was quite tenacious. You know, you got stuck in that midfield, which is something that was lacking at that time. But we didn't really get a chance to speak to you at all. So just a little bit about your history of football.
Yeah, that's fine. So I've started playing football when I was probably around 5 or 6. Obviously, when I was younger, we started like around playing like mixed gender teams back then. When I was younger, I'd play with boys up until I was a teenager. So that was like normal grassroots football. Yeah. When I was at college, I played with like the Blues Academy that was connected to the college. But then I've played like from I started mainly at like Lichfield, which was the initial Solihull United. And I stayed there for about 4 years, I think, quite a long time. Then is that when I moved to Moors? Um, I was at Moors for 2 seasons, I think. Yeah, Moors for two. Then I went to rugby for 1 season, and then I went back to Moors for like a very, very short, brief period of time before I come to Stourbridge. So yeah, I've played quite. I think I've played quite safe, to be fair. Like when I was like younger and stuff, I kind of just played where I enjoyed it rather than like having anything behind me to push me. So I think it's not till I've got older and I've had more of like my own push and aspirations to do better that I've actually pushed myself, like from going to Moors to rugby and stuff, like push myself to play at a better standard because that's something I've wanted like for myself.
I think I remember your name because when you was at Lichfield, that would have been the time when Stourbridge was in that league as well. So I do vaguely remember your name. I couldn't remember anything about you, but when that signing was made, I'm sure I remember it back in those days. You say you tried to push yourself. Was that like one of the reasons why you went to Stourbridge because it was a tier three kind of level?
Yeah, I think obviously being at rugby before the season before, I kind of knew what the standard was already about anyway. Um, and I didn't really want to drop. I think because I got on with the managers and stuff at Moors, and obviously rugby was quite a distance at the time for me to stay again for another season and leave work early and stuff to train. That I went to back to something like I already knew when I wanted to play at that standard. So obviously when I got the opportunity to be at Stourbridge, obviously I was really happy because that's the standard that I did like want to be at. And I know obviously it was a club that like it needed a bit more support at the time, so I appreciated getting the opportunity to be there.
It's good, yeah. You mentioned about like playing like mixed gender as a youngster. Did you ever get a chance to watch much women's football on TV at that point, or even go to any matches? Because obviously the accessibility back then was a lot different to what it is now.
Yeah, I really don't remember any watching any games at all when I was younger. Like, I think it was so normal, like, because I was so sporty, I remember going like just to school and just playing like with the boys all the time, or even when I got to like university age, like 18 to 21, I bumped into a boy that went to like my prime school, and he literally said, all I remember was he was so good at football. And I think it was just so normal to have like your odd one or two girls, and like women's football really weren't a push compared to like what it is now. And I think that's maybe why, maybe when I was younger I didn't push myself as much, because you don't see it so big at the time and you're just happy with where you're at. Do you know what I mean? Because that seemed like the norm when I was younger.
Yeah, and I guess that then with the Lionesses winning the Euros, coming runners up in the World Cup, did you see much of a difference then? Maybe from a player's point of view, did that give a bit of a boom to the level that you was playing at, or was it maybe just the WSL teams that maybe got that vibe? Did you ever see anything different when the Lionesses won?
No, yeah, I do think like since it's been more publicised on television and obviously they've shown more success, I do think it's promoted women's football massively. Like, you do see such a difference now. There's girls' clubs that you see starting from a much younger age that back when I was younger I wouldn't have even had access to. There's so much more talent that you see now in like younger kids than you probably wouldn't see. And I just think it makes it become more like widely accepted. Like, you'll even hear people now say like the women's are doing better than the England men's team and stuff like that, when you wouldn't have heard that like 10 years ago. So it's definitely made a massive improvement in terms of promoting women's football.
Yeah, I get that. I do. Yeah. It sounds like that you've like obviously had quite a lengthy time in football, especially like starting at a young age like you did. What would you say has been like some of your biggest challenges as a player?
I think what I'd probably say the main two is one, I'd say there's so many teams now that even though you have teams in good leagues and higher leagues, that clubs don't have the structure that they need to be there. So I've been in quite a few teams lately where they've not been 100% supported, and even though you're happy to be playing at a good standard, you don't have anything backing behind you, and that then puts so many obstacles in the way that you don't realize until you're already in the team. um and it's hard because in leagues like tier 3 you've got teams that are training full time, that are getting paid full time money, and have got the opportunity to do that. But in the same league you've probably got teams that are training twice a week. Do you know what I mean? And then you're working and you're competing in the same league against each other, and it's literally you're not at the same standard. So I'd say that's really hard, especially as a player when you're playing against harder teams. Like, you will notice the difference in that sense. And the only other thing I'd say is the higher up you go, it's hard. Like, especially I find it really hard finding a balance because I work full time. Then like on top of that you're playing football. Like, as a woman, that's kind of the battle that you have to face. Like, I
Yeah.
absolutely loved being at rugby and it's probably the best team I've ever been at, but I was so tired because I was leaving work, having to agree to leave work at 2, train at 3 till 5, then I'm traveling back. And it's so good to have the opportunity to experience a team like that and be there, but it's so hard at the same time. Do you know what I mean? You don't really get a rest. Whereas, like, when men play at the same standard, that's their job. Do you know what I mean? So they can put their all into one thing. They don't have to work all day and then go to train. So I think as a female, that's probably still probably a battle for a lot of females in up until at least tier 3. Everyone would be fighting the same battle because most people would have to work and play football at the same time, which is a shame, really.
Yeah, I have this conversation with a lot of people away from football, like the people who I work with, who are getting to know women's football now because, like you say, it's on TV every week, and they hear me talk about it. And that's all I talk about really at work. And their eyebrows raised when they realise that you can be in the top 48 teams in the country, but still have to work as well as play. and it is still a lot of education for people to actually realise that that's what you have to go through. And I very often get players on this channel and say, just describe your day, because you do get up at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, do your 9 till 5 job, and then if you're lucky, get something to eat before you set out, and then obviously then got your training for a couple of hours, and it is a real full day, isn't it? Do you find that the jump from tier 4 to tier 3 is the biggest jump, or because obviously you're playing in tier 5 as well? What would you say has been the biggest jump so far?
Yeah, I probably would say tier 4 to tier 3 is totally different. Obviously, I played in tier 4 for a couple of seasons, and that is obviously compared to when I was 8 to now. I think it's got a lot more competitive, and there's a lot more better teams in there now. That it's like, for example, this season, you'd probably look and think there's a lot of good teams in that league. But I do still think like the jump is massive, like the intensity of the game. Obviously, like I said earlier, like the amount of times that the teams are training and how much more, especially the higher clubs, like when I was at rugby, you get so much extra added in, like privilege wise, that you don't realise. Whereas at tier 4, you're not necessarily gonna get it. So things like gym, like when you get gym plans to work on specific things, like you probably don't get that in tier 4 as much. I think it's just the added little extras as well that you notice you get at a higher standard, but I suppose you've got more time to do those things. You're very limited with what there's most teams that train twice a week, isn't there, in tier 4? But yeah, I do think it is a big jump, which is probably why teams that go up probably do struggle a little bit, because I think it's a lot.
Yeah. Do you find that some teams maybe in tier 4 need to like almost practice doing it 3 times a week, even if it's like 2 times a week with the club, and then maybe a gym session themselves off their own back, just to kind of get into the habit of 3 nights a week? I need to, really be intense, just so I can kind of get used to that going into tier 3.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good, but I suppose it's hard then, because in tier 3, you probably most teams in tier well, majority of teams in tier 3 probably have a budget. So if you're expecting then someone to come and commit to 3 days of training and a Sunday in tier 4, they're going to say, well, are you going to be giving me anything? Do you know what I mean? Some people will be
Yeah, I do.
saying,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm taking out a lot of my time now, and that's the issue in the lower tiers, is whether they have the financial budget, if that's what players want. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard.
yeah. It's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah. Solihull Moor, you spent a bit of time there. You mentioned it earlier. A big badge. I remember when Stourbridge was climbing up through the tiers, and Solihull Moors was a team that I wanted to catch up. As a fan, Solihull Moors was almost like a household name because of how big the club is. Would you describe your time there?
I really enjoyed it, to be fair. Yeah, I loved it. The coaching staff were absolutely amazing when I was there. The team was great. I think it's only when I went back just before I joined Stourbridge is when you realise how much they probably were struggling, that you didn't. I think as a player, when you join a team, you never see how much goes on behind closed doors, or you never see like even how much down to like how much the coaches or the other staff actually do and how much time they put in of their own time. That like as a player, sometimes I feel like we take it for granted. We come to train and we might not like a session or whatever, and we don't realise how much they actually do put, how much time they put into it. So yeah, when I was first there for the 2 years, like I couldn't fault it. I had a great time. They were doing well in the league. I remember playing against Stourbridge in the league when Stourbridge got promoted, and Moors were doing really, really well. It was only until the last time I went back that obviously they ended up struggling so much. But yeah, it's a shame really, because like you said, they're such a big team and they've got such a big badge. Like the men do so well that they carry such a big name that when you look at the women, you kind of feel like it's a bit of a letdown in a sense, but they're not. I think there's always this like crossfire of teams with names, or you always think that the women's and the men's sections are so like combined and so supportive of each other, when in most teams you'll find that it's not the case, and it's totally different. So yeah, it's hard in that sense, because people that obviously invest in the men might not necessarily want to invest in the woman, like in the women, and that's a choice of the owners and stuff at the time. So obviously the club when I was there last were struggling. So then I kind of felt a bit like disappointed in a sense that I'd let down other opportunities and come back to like within probably about a month it had all gone to pot so quickly, and all the players were like really upset about it, and it wasn't really nice to see how much it had affected everyone.
Yeah, it was very sad to see all those tweets come out at that time. And we don't need to get into that now. I didn't want to necessarily make that show about this, but yeah, it was. They weren't the only team. You know, if you have a look over the last 18 months, there's been quite a few players speak out, hasn't there? And from different teams. So yeah, it's a shame, but hopefully, you know, they do bounce back and get someone involved there who can push them forward again. You was announced on the 25th of October that you was signed for Stourbridge. How did that signing come about?
So I'd said that I'd left Moors, and then Aid had put like a 7-day in for me, which I was really surprised at. Didn't expect it. Then I'd obviously was fine to come to training and stuff. Obviously met Aid personally, met the girls. Aid was absolutely lovely. Like I couldn't fault him as a person. He's really down to earth, really nice. Everyone made me feel so welcome, and obviously not only did they make me feel welcome, I've then got the opportunity playing at the tier that I really wanted to play at in the first place. So then I kind of thought maybe everything happens for a reason, and it was really nice just to get the opportunity to go somewhere where I'd felt like the start of my season, and it started in a bit of a rut, and then it turned into something positive. So it was really nice.
We certainly hit the ground running because I'm not too sure if you was aware of this, but at that point, you know, Calster was on like a 9-game losing streak, pretty much. They lost 9 games on the trot across all competitions, and your debut was against Calster,
Yeah.
where we won 2-1. Can you remember much of that game and that initial game? What? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I can remember. Obviously, yeah, me going into that game knowing, obviously, 2 teams down the bottom, you know, it's going to be such an important game because it's a game where you know it's somewhere where you can take points from. Obviously, being my first game, and knowing I was starting, I was really nervous. But yeah, it was. I remember it just being such a good feeling to win, and I just feel like we fought really hard in that game. Like we didn't stop all game, and we played really, really well. Going into the game, you probably wouldn't have thought that would be the score at the end of the game. Because I know obviously both teams probably didn't have the best start out to the season. But it was nice just coming into the game and like just making an impact straight away. And I think in that game, like Aid gave me player of the match for the game, and it was just overwhelming, but so nice like to have got that started, and like we won the game for the team. So it was really, really nice.
Yeah, I know Stourbridge fans were buzzing at that point because we knew from the previous season that it was going to be a very tough season, and we just had to get points off certain teams. And so to go into that game ahead of Calcer and then to win that game as well was an amazing feeling. How did you cope about the other games where you was up against so many big teams, as you mentioned earlier? It must have been so tough mentally as well when you are losing against several big clubs. Did it ever play on your mind or ever get you down?
I wouldn't say it got me down. No, I just think it can be quite deflating going into games. And I know, like, when we go into games into higher teams, you know kind of what you're expecting, but it's different between that and going into games. And then we went to Burnley, we travelled to Burnley, we got beat 9-0, and then it's just it is quite deflating at times. But I don't ever think anyone got down from the scores that we were going home with every week. I mean, it was such a nice group of girls that wasn't really like the problem that we were carrying. Do you know what I mean? I think we had to look at what we were putting into it, and how that was going to impact our outcomes more than the score. Because like you said, I think they knew at the start of the season that it was going to be hard. And looking at the league, you know, there's so many good teams in it. that you have to weigh up what games you can get points from and what games you're probably most likely not going to. Do you know what I mean? So I think you was already prepared in your head to know what you were facing yourself with when you were going into games.
Yeah, and that league next year will be even more tough. So Calston's obviously in our boat now, so they'll go into it next season with a new manager and 1 year's worth of experience. But they've got the likes of Middlesbrough being promoted, and Middlesbrough aren't a poor club, and Loughborough who've been in there in the past. So instead of having like Stourbridge up against them, they're now up against Middlesbrough and Loughborough. So that league just gets stronger and stronger, which is good to see. But it's a shame when some of the smaller clubs get knocked down if it is because of money. It is. You never ended the season at Stourbridge, but talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on next season. Have you got anything in mind, or are you keeping your options open at this point?
Yeah, so currently, obviously, I've been training with a team, but I'm still like keeping my options open. I have been approached by a few. I think it's good to not kind of put your eggs in one basket until you know someone's certain about wanting you. Do you know what I mean? I've spent
Yeah,
other seasons where I've trained for like weeks on end at a team and then they still don't give you any clarity. So I think I've kind of learned from that to not like just straight away, as much as I might be interested in one, like be open to all the opportunities that kind of come to you because you just don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, I want to stay in tier 3 if I can because I've just got the mentality of as I'm getting older, I just want to play as high as I can for as long as I can, really, because I know one day I'm not going to be in the same position. So I think it'll be nice to stay in tier 3 if possible. That's kind of what my ambition is for this season.
it's always fascinates me, and it still does now. I've been around women's football since about 2018, and it still fascinates me now about the amount of movement that there potentially is with players throughout the season, and sometimes that's dependent on the manager who's there as well. But how do you find, because you're probably used to it, you're used to it every season, but how do you find it? Because there is so much movement that you could think to yourself, right, I'm going to this team, and I know all those players, and I probably put myself in this kind of bracket. But then within 6 weeks, all those players could potentially leave, go to a different team, and then you're like, oh, this isn't the team that I signed up for. But how do you find it with the amount of movement that there actually is?
Yeah, like you said, it has become quite normal. I mean, like most seasons now, every season people are shifting teams, whereas like in an ideal world, I wouldn't want to keep changing every season. Like I tend to be quite committed to teams if they're giving me kind of the things that I'd want in a team. Do you know what I mean? Like I stayed at Moors when it was good until I got a better opportunity at rugby, and I would have stayed at rugby if it wasn't for the distance. So I'm not saying I don't think it's the nicest because no one likes change, really, do they? And you're constantly putting yourself in new environments all the time and having to meet new people. And I know football world is football world, so you do know people majority in each team, but yeah, it's a lot sometimes to take on, especially when there's like new managers, new players. It's a lot. Like lately, I feel like I've swapped and changed so much. Like people that I speak to are like, I can't even keep up. Like you sound like you've been at like 3 teams in a season, and it's not intentional. I think I just had a bit of a rough season. Do you know what I mean? But it's not the nicest. But sometimes you just have to like bear it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And when you mentioned managers moving, I Clements announced at Reddish Borough. Did you see that one coming at all?
No, not really. I knew we knew someone that was already there. But I know like Stourbridge had really put him off kind of the whole footballing stuff for a bit, so I didn't know if he was going to take a break. But I guess he's probably gone into that role with no pressure and no like tier 3 is so different. There's so much pressure to stay up, and there's stuff that would have wanted from the club. Whereas I know now, like going into this, it's like a fresh start for him and a chance for him to just probably express himself as he is without any pressure. So I think it'll be a nice, like, fresh opportunity for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and good luck to him. Yeah, and lastly, Demi, just like your thoughts on next season. Then, have you got kind of any ambitions yourself? Anything that you want to get out of next season?
No, not specifically. More just like I said earlier, try and maintain being in tier 3 and just like improving myself as a player, like making sure I am the best that I can be. Just trying to push myself as much as possible. So just making use of wherever I do go, making use of what's around me. yeah, I think it's nice and great to get experience in tier 3, and it's amazing getting the opportunity to go and play at some of the stadiums that you do get to play at with some of the teams that we have in there. So I think it's just embracing whatever comes next, whether it is being in tier 3 or whether it's dropping down to tier 4. I think it's just embracing whatever challenge kind of comes next, really.
And there's certainly a lot of good teams in tier 4 now that you can get involved in at some point. You know, that tier 4 keeps getting stronger as well, doesn't it? So I'm sure wherever you end up is going to be a good team, and I hope that you enjoy it. Absolutely. Look, thank you very much for joining us, Demi. Really appreciate it. I know that some of the Stourbridge fans will enjoy seeing this as well, so I'll make sure that everyone's aware of it and they can tune in. And maybe some of your future fans and future clubs can look back on this one as well. So thank you very much for your time, Demi. I do appreciate it. And I'll see
No,
you again
don't be
soon.
silly. Brilliant. Thank you for your time too.
Thank you, Demi. Bye bye.
No worries. See you later.